Gut feeling real? Chapter 1. The Animal Under the Noise. At 5:32 a.m., long before the coffee shops unshuttered and the buses began their coughing rounds, Mara stood on a quiet corner beneath a blinking red hand. The city had not yet decided to be itself. It was still a collection of choices, half-constructed. Her phone vibrated in her palm with the eager certainty only navigation apps possess. "Walk east," it said. 7 minutes faster. 7 minutes. Enough to matter when your day is tightly laced. Enough to dismiss when your ribs are humming a different tune. Mara felt a tightness low in her belly, a small, unglamorous clutch, as if someone had gently pinched her from the inside and then let go. Nothing dramatic, nothing you would submit to a doctor's office. It was the kind of bodily whisper everyone has, the kind we trample with our schedules. She looked down the eastbound street. It was the efficient choice. A straight line through warehouses and one block of construction scaffolding like a rib cage, green netting balled up like sleeping lizards. A figure moved near a pallet of bricks. Another figure flickered and disappeared. Nothing remarkable. It was simply a city behaving like a city. She turned west instead. The app scolded. 9 minutes slower now. By noon, there would be nothing to say about this decision. By noon, she wouldn't even remember she'd made it. That's what most gut feelings are in real life. Quiet edits that never make the highlight reel, small reroutings that protect us from inconveniences we'll never catalog, from embarrassments too minor to narrate, from risks that would have become nothing at all. The proof evaporates in the same warm air it arrived on. Gut feelings are notorious for leaving no evidence, and yet, later that week, Mara would pass that same block and find the scaffolding cordoned off. A worker had dropped a crate. A piece had shattered and showered the sidewalk with teeth. 12 minutes earlier, a man had been sitting on the stoop where the crate landed. He had moved to tie his shoe. He was fine. Everyone was fine. The newspaper did not mention it. The city kept being itself. Was Mara's redirected walk a premonition? A lucky coincidence? A half-conscious detection of a wrongness? Maybe the faint, metallic squeal of a stressed cable? The slant of an unsecured board? A body reading a street like an animal reads a forest? What exactly is a gut feeling? And is it real? The short answer is yes. The long answer is the rest of this book. Gut feeling is not a spell cast by mystical organs. It is not the exclusive property of the enlightened, the damaged, or the brave. It is not always wise, fair, or kind. It is sometimes biased, often jumpy, occasionally true to the point of saving a life. It is the oldest instrument you own, older than your language, older than your list-making, older than your belief that you can reason your way through every challenge like a courtroom drama. If that instrument feels broken in your hands, this chapter is a patient repair. The body that knows before you do. Close your eyes only for a moment, and only if you can safely do so. Recall the last time you entered a room and knew, before hearing a word, that something had just been said. The laughter was one notch too loud. The air felt thin as if everyone had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. That knowing didn't arrive as a sentence. It arrived as a bodily micro-weather. Slight heat, shallow breath, a tug behind your sternum, muscles tightening as if they were making room for a blow that might never come. We are taught that knowledge lives in the head, a monarch ruling from the top floor. But most of what you call split-second knowing happens in a whole kingdom economy of nerves and hormones, of heart rate and breath, of muscle tension and micro-movements and pupils widening to drink in more light. Your gut, in the colloquial sense, is not just your stomach. It's your interoceptive field, the whole chorus of sensations your body uses to report on itself. Interoception is the sense that lets you feel your heartbeat without touching your chest. The way you can tell a fever is coming before the thermometer agrees, the way you somehow know you are thirsty before your mouth dries. It is the sense that says, I am safe, or something is off. Softer than sight, quicker than words, there is a highway connecting the gut and the brain, the vagus nerve, whose name suggests wandering and whose job includes exactly that, wandering messages back and forth. But this is not a one-way street. The brain predicts and the body reports. Prediction is the brain's main economy, anticipating the next frame of reality and checking the body's data stream for confirmation. When the prediction and the report disagree, a signal flares. You call that signal a feeling. If the disagreement is subtle and almost imperceptible rattle in the scenery, you call it a hunch. That hunch can be startling. It can feel like trespass. Who told you before I did? But it's the other way around. The body told quietly, insistently, and your thinking caught up. Sometimes your thinking never does. You walk the long way around the block and only later, if ever, invent a reason. That's the first truth of gut feelings. They are a form of perception, imperfect, just like sight in fog. Useful, just like stepping more carefully when the fog densifies. What they are not is magic. That's the second truth. The map is not the territory, but it beats walking blind. To grasp how gut feelings function, borrow a metaphor from pilots. Instruments don't tell the truth. They report a truth in a useful way. A gauge sticks, a needle flutters, an indicator barks about a problem that doesn't exist because the sensor is wet, because the wire is loose, because the world doesn't care about your tidy dashboards. But pilots still watch their instruments. They know to triangulate. They know to cross-check. They know to keep flying the plane. Your bodily instruments are just as messy. The heart pounds for many reasons: love, fear, caffeine, an email from a person you'd rather not be. The stomach tightens because it expects harm, but also because it expects glory. The anxious superstar and the terrorized child share a physiology. A gut feeling must be cross-checked with experience, with context, with reason. The map isn't the territory, but it beats walking blind. Think of your gut like a smoke alarm. It does not detect fire. It detects particles in the air that often accompany fire. That's why burnt toast can send a family shuffling into the street at dawn. Call that a false positive, laugh, and carry on. But nobody rips the alarm from the ceiling because it cried wolf once. You adjust the sensitivity. You learn the sound of this is probably toast and the sound of get out now. There is a discipline to listening well. It begins with humility. I am an animal first, a storyteller second. My stories are brilliant and terrible both. My body is honest and neurotic both. The trick is not to throw one away for the other, but to make them shake hands in daylight. Thin slices and thick lives. A chess grandmaster glances at a board and senses that a configuration is wrong. She cannot yet say why. The wrongness arrives as a taste. Later she will analyze the position. She will name the vulnerability on the file, the trap masked as a gift. But first, there is the taste. We all have our domains where thin slices of experience yield sudden knowing. The seasoned nurse who notices the color returning to a patient's cheeks half a minute before the blood pressure cuff agrees. The bartender who can tell if a date is careening toward tenderness or debris. The parent who senses a child's lie not by the words but by the way the words avoid the body. This kind of knowing flourishes in environments with feedback. If you spend enough hours in a context where outcomes return to you quickly and clearly, this choice produced that result. You will develop a library of patterns your body can recognize before your tongue can explain. The feedback trains the animal. The animal learns faster than the tongue. Contrast that with environments where outcomes are delayed, ambiguous, or contaminated by luck. The stock market makes poets of winners and idiots of losers, and then swaps the roles a season later. The feedback is dirty. A gut developed here is often an altar to randomness. If your life has taught you in thick, clear loops, input, output, learn your gut gains authority. If your loops are noisy, your gut gains swagger, but not skill. Most of us live in a blend. Thick feedback for the small things, muddy feedback for the big ones. That's why gut feelings are great at telling you whether to invite this person to the small dinner and not particularly great at telling you whether to marry them. Your body knows how conversations feel when they flow. It does not know the future's strange arithmetic about grief, growth, illness, desire, money, timing, weather. So, we practice making our thin slices a little thicker. We practice noticing, naming, and checking. We practice not mistaking the feeling of familiarity for the fact of safety, not mistaking the feeling of excitement for the guarantee of goodness. The 3 questions that save you from yourself. A gut feeling arrives. Before you crown it or handcuff it, ask 3 questions. Is this mine, or is this memory? Sometimes you are feeling this room. Sometimes you are feeling the echo of another room. The body saves patterns that once kept you safe and deploys them so fast you can't tell who is talking. The boss's tone is your father's tone, is your 4th grade teacher's tone, is your own inner critic on a humid Tuesday. If the feeling is memory, be kind to it. Thank it for its service. Then ask it to step aside while you check the present. Is this signal or is this state? Hunger, exhaustion, dehydration, hormonal tides, each can costume itself as intuition. The body that is underfueled will perceive the world as one long request it cannot meet. The body that is well rested will forgive the world more than the world deserves. Drink water, eat something, move your limbs. The question is not glamorous. It saves kingdoms. Is this avoidance or is this aim? Do you want to leave because deep down you know the fit is wrong, or because the work you fear is the work you need? Both will feel like, get me out of here. One is a protective animal. The other is a procrastinating animal. Write down what you're afraid will happen if you stay 5 more minutes. Read it back aloud. Sometimes the sound alone will sort the 2 animals into their separate pens. These questions do not banish intuition. They house it. They give it a desk, a nameplate, a direct phone line, and a supervisor who cares. Training the quiet sense. If gut feeling is real, it can be trained. The training is not mystical. It is rigorous, noticing with gentle hands. 1. The calibration notebook. For 1 month, carry a small notebook or a notes app dedicated to this. Each time you feel a nudge, go left, not right. Wait, not now. This person, not that one. Jot it down in a sentence with time and place. Resist arguing with yourself on the page. Later, once outcome arrives today or next week, add a check mark for accurate, a squiggle for inaccurate, and a question mark for unresolved. Patterns will emerge. You will see where your gut is a concert violin and where it's a kazoo you found in a cereal box. Knowing the difference is power. 2. The body scan with a twist. Classic body scans ask you to notice your breath, your shoulders, your jaw. That's useful, but add context. Before you enter a decision-heavy situation, a meeting, a date, a medical appointment, scan yourself and give each zone a 3-word status. Chest, light, buzzy, expectant. Belly, tight, defensive, cold. Throat, open, warm, ready. Afterward, scan again. Over time, you will have a map of your physiological signatures before and after different kinds of events. You will learn that tight belly plus warm throat is your healthy nervous, not your runaway. You will learn that cold hands plus buzzing chest is your I'm pretending and needs attention. 3. The 10-minute slow walk. Once a day, walk without your phone at a quarter of your usual speed. Let your eyes scan the environment as if you were an animal discovering a new territory. Count how many blue items you can spot. Count how many circular objects. We are training the orienting reflex, the built-in move that says, notice, then decide. Modern life asks us to decide, then notice. Flip it back. 10 minutes is enough to retune your instrument. 4. The pre-mortem and post-warmth. Before a decision, do a pre-mortem. Imagine the choice failed spectacularly and list 3 reasons why. If your body thrashes with recognition at one of the reasons, that is data. After a choice that goes well, linger. Let the body register warmth. Most of us sprint past success and linger only on pain. Let your nervous system learn what this worked feels like so it can find it sooner next time. 5. A council of selves. Invite 3 versions of you to weigh in. The scientist data, precedent. The poet meaning beauty, and the guard dog, safety, boundaries. Let each write 2 sentences about the choice in front of you. Your gut feeling will often align with one council member. Seeing the others on paper keeps you honest. When gut feeling is not your friend, we must be precise here. There are times when your gut is not a wise elder but a skittish horse. Trauma makes any animal vigilant. If your body has learned that the world can turn without warning, you may read danger in arrangements that are merely unfamiliar. The culture you grew up in also writes over your instruments with its own preferences, who is trustworthy on sight, whose voice counts as confident, which gestures read as aggressive. Bias dresses itself as intuition with embarrassing ease. If this is you, if your gut most often points away from people who don't look like you, or away from opportunities that stretch you but won't break you, be careful not to present your bias as a sacred nudge. Do the notebook, do the slow walk, do the scans, ask the 3 questions. If your instruments were installed by fear or prejudice, the calibration phase will feel like betrayal. It is not. It is liberation. On the other end sits the person whose gut is not frightened but intoxicated. Some of us are wired for the high of the new. Our gut mistakes novelty for destiny. We sense excitement and declare it alignment. If that's you, install repeatable checks. Share your decisions with a friend who loves you enough to ask, do you want the thing, or do you want the feeling you have when you chase the thing. There's no shame in wanting the feeling. Say it out loud, and you will want it less recklessly. A firefighter's hands. When Captain Luis Herrera talked about the day he pulled a family from a smoke-dense apartment, he didn't mention heroics. He mentioned gloves. They felt wrong, he said. Not the right kind of wrong, like we're in danger. A different wrong. They were clean, new. My hands kept slipping off the hose. I knew we had a problem before my brain knew. He swapped gloves with a rookie whose pair were broken in, worn to the hand. The swap cost them 12 seconds. It bought them all the dexterity they needed when the hallway became a wind tunnel. In the debrief, the chief asked what had saved them in that moment. Luis said, friction. And as say, the body is full of friction-based intelligence. The way a tool fits your palm, the particular squeak of a poorly maintained door, the almost inaudible shift of engine tone that tells a pilot she is 10 seconds from a stall, the micro stumbles of a sentence when negotiation is failing. These are pattern libraries burned in by repetition. There is something holy about them because they are not theory. They are scar tissue that learn to sing. Your life has its own friction. Pay attention to what slides and what catches. Notice the choices after which you sleep like a cat in a lamp-lit window, and the choices after which you sleep like someone guarding a treasure. Not because the first are always right and the second always wrong. Sometimes you guard the things that matter most, but because your gut often learns in those micro-frictions long before you do. The daylight rule. Here is a rule for the practical among us. Call it the daylight rule. If your gut feeling will pass the daylight test if you can explain tomorrow, in daylight, to someone you respect, why you acted as you did, then honor it. If you would hide the decision, or if you will need magic words to justify it, let the feeling ride shotgun while reason drives. Daylight is a disinfectant not because it shames you, but because it reveals whether your gut is protecting or flattering you. I left the party early because my stomach turned when I saw them arguing might stand in daylight. I signed the contract at midnight because it felt like destiny might not. The difference is not poetry. It's accountability. This rule does not demand a dissertation for every choice. It asks only that you be able to narrate your bodily knowing in terms a trusted other could follow. That act alone purifies the signal. It slows the animal just enough to let it point instead of bolt. Stories we learn to hear. Every family teaches a curriculum about intuition without ever naming the course. Some families elevate the gut beyond correction. Always trust yourself, they say, forgetting to include the part about training and repair. Other families mock it into silence. Stop being dramatic, they say, meaning stop making us uncomfortable by noticing what we pretend not to know. Many of us learn to wear a split, stoic on the surface, turbulent within. To heal that split, put 2 chairs facing each other in your mind. In one sits the part of you that notices quietly, the animal under the noise. In the other sits the part of you that argues well, the city planner, the contracts reader, the narrator. Ask them to write a joint statement about one current decision. Let each revise the other. No sarcasm, no clawing. If you can hold them both in the same room for more than 10 minutes without one flinging a chair, you will have already earned a kind of freedom that feels like oxygen. The hero of small decisions. We hunger for stories where intuition saves the day in cinematic style, the avoided plane, the unentered alley, the last-second turn that rewrites a fate. Those stories exist, but their existence can blind us to the true battleground, daily life. The gut is not primarily a disaster avoidance system. It is a rhythm instrument for small decisions. It tells you when to speak the kind sentence that costs you your pride. It tells you when to stop refreshing a screen and take a walk that will, for reasons you cannot know, place you on a bench beside someone whose life will braid with yours. It tells you when to leave a conversation that is quietly draining you, not because the other person is cruel, but because they are no longer a home for your becoming. If you train your gut, it will not make you a superhero. It will make you a better steward of your ordinary hours. That is the magic nobody sells because it is too humble to pitch. And yet, most of what we call a life is precisely the harvest of those hours. False alarms, true bells. We return to Mara, who took the slower route. Was her feeling correct? We can't know. That's part of the itchiness of intuition. It refuses courtroom standards. The best you can do is ask, did my choice honor both the animal and the city planner? Did it pass the daylight test? Did it make sense to the me who must live with its consequences? If the answer is yes, you have already won twice. You kept yourself safe, and you respected yourself. Even if the scaffolding had never fallen, even if the block had been uneventful, the act of listening would have tuned your instrument. Tomorrow, it will play a little clearer. If the answer is no, if you realize you mistook hunger for hazard or anxiety for prophecy, write it down kindly. Shame is a poor teacher. Curiosity is a brilliant one. What the scientists say and what the poets add. Scientists, when they are at their best, tell us that intuition depends on pattern recognition, interoception, predictive processing, and fast, slow cognition systems, trading favors like old friends. They tell us that expertise compresses time, allowing the brain-body system to pull from libraries we don't remember cataloging. They warn us that in domains where feedback is poor, the gut learns bad habits. They encourage us to measure, to reflect, to adjust. Poets, when they are at their best, tell us that intuition is the body's way of praying, that the earth speaks in currents we can't translate, that the wind off the sea is a teacher if we let it be. They warn us against building lives so loud that the whispers can't find us. They encourage us to stand still. Both are right, and neither is complete. Let the lab and the lyric hold hands. There is a reason your deepest knowing feels like a chord rather than a note. A brief field guide to signals. For your ear, the drop. A quick sinking sensation in the stomach often accompanies sudden recognition of danger, social or physical. It says, stop. Look again, the hum. A low, steady warmth in the chest, not exciting but comforting, often accompanies choices that align with values even when inconvenient. It says, proceed without drama. The buzz. Surface-level excitement, fidgeting, bright thoughts. It says, new, new, new. Check for novelty intoxication. The fog. Numbness, dissociation. I can't tell. It says, overwhelm. Delay decisions if possible. Reground in the body, then return. The hook. Tightness at the back of the throat. Shallow breath. Often accompanies people-pleasing or conflict avoidance. It says, you are about to betray yourself to keep the peace. The open window. A lightness behind the eyes. Easy breath. It says, something wants to come through you. Open the door, don't shove. These signals do not carry universal meanings. Your body's language is accented by your history. But a field guide is a start. Build your own entries. Share them with one other human. Let them share theirs. There is something about naming that invites respect. The risk of being real. When you begin listening to your gut, life may get messier before it gets clearer. You will notice the conversations you tolerated because they were convenient. You will notice the work you do that harms your future self to please your past self. You will notice love that is devotion. With a wound woven in, you will notice that your calendar is full of small self-betrayals. This noticing can feel like disloyalty to the person who got you this far. It is not disloyalty. It is gratitude in motion. You thank the version of you who learned the necessary compromises. Then you become the version who can afford better ones. The cost of being real is that you will sometimes be misunderstood by people who benefited from your pretending. The reward is that you will not misunderstand yourself. The morning you'll remember. One morning, perhaps this week, you will pause with your hand on a doorknob. There will be no grand narrative arcs about destiny. There will be no swell of strings. There will only be a pause, like a bridge that lifts a few degrees to let a boat pass. You will wait for the boat, 10 seconds, maybe 12. Then you will open the door. In that thin slice, you will have practiced a life where the animal under the noise and the narrator above the street are allies. In that thin slice, you will confirm that gut feeling is not a superstition you outgrow, but a sense you refine. In that thin slice, you will do something both ancient and astonishing. You will trust the truth that arrives without a paragraph, and you will give it one anyway. That's all a chapter can do, fit a vocabulary to your own quiet. The rest is practice. We will go deeper, because there are still dragons in the caves. How to tell terror from truth when both shout. How to act when the gut and the data split down the middle. How to repair your instrument after a season of wrong notes. But for now, take this with you. Your gut is real. It is not infallible. It is not a god. It is a sense. It is the oldest part of you that still remembers the sound of tall grass and the meaning of silence. It is the friend that speaks only when you agree to listen. It will meet you tomorrow at 5:32 a.m. on a quiet corner beneath a blinking red hand in a city deciding to be itself. Chapter 2. The Bridge Between the Animal and the Architect. By the time Mara's first coffee cooled, the city had committed to itself. Trucks exhaled in loading bays, newspapers sloughed against doorways, and commuters learned once again how to be a crowd. She watched all of it from a cafe table that wobbled no matter which folded napkin she shoved under which leg. Her inbox glowed with urgency. An offer letter attached, a deadline bolded. The job paid more. The commute would eat the sun from both ends of her day. The people in her interview were competent and kind, in the way that fluorescent lights are kind reliably, impersonally. Her gut did not lurch or sing. It held a neutrality so thorough it felt impolite. This, too, is part of the truth. Many of our biggest choices don't come with trumpet blasts from the body. The absence of a signal can be a signal. It can also be the quiet before a thought arrives. Mara opened her notebook, drew a line down the center of a page, wrote animal on one side and architect on the other. The animal would speak first. The architect would counter. They would try to meet in daylight. Across town, in a studio crowded by houseplants and unlabeled paint jars, a muralist named Kento stood on a ladder and tried to decide whether to risk a particular blue. He could hear his teacher's voice from years ago. You can always darken a blue that's too bright. It's the loud reds you must earn. A sentence like that had become part of his body, the way a violinist's posture becomes part of a song. He watched the wall. He watched his hand. His gut said, "Yes, this blue." He mixed it. 10 minutes later, he stepped back and would have smiled if he hadn't been alone. The blue held the wall without swallowing it. He had not thought himself through that choice. He had not run a calculation. He had rehearsed his way to an intuition that looked like courage and was simply memory wearing work clothes. 2 lives, 2 decisions, 2 kinds of knowing. A question to steer the day. How do we build the bridge that lets them share a weight, terror, or truth? 3 ways to tell. Sometimes both your gut and your thoughts are loud. Fear plays the siren, and truth rings a bell that sounds dangerously similar. If you have ever stood at a microphone with your heart climbing fences, you know this confusion intimately. Is the body saying run because you are unsafe, or is it saying, with equal volume, stay because you are on the verge of growth? Here are 3 tests that help, not as indictment, but as illumination. 1. The distance test. Imagine the decision is made the way your gut suggests. Now slide a week into the future and watch yourself live with it. In this scene, is your body contracted the whole time, jaw clenched, shoulders narrow, or does it contract and then relax into a wider field? Fear that protects you tends to maintain contraction. Truth that terrifies you tends to contract, then release. Practice. Close your eyes for 60 seconds and feel for the release. It is small. It is the exhale behind the first gulp. 2. The exposure test. Repeat the stimulus that triggered your fear in safe, low-dose ways. If each exposure increases dread, your gut may be protecting you from harm. If each exposure decreases dread and increases focus, your gut may be protecting you from avoidance. That is how we learn to love cold water. First ankles, then knees, then the brief panic at the ribs, then the laugh that says, "I'm alive." Ask, after 3 small exposures in a controlled setting, is my attention more available or less? 3. The specificity test. True signals are weirdly specific. They point at a hinge, not the whole door. Vague alarms like everything is wrong often belong to states, hunger, exhaustion, loneliness, and histories, the past trying to pilot the present. If your gut can name a particular element, it's that tone, that clause, that corner. It's more likely to be delivering a useful map. You need none of these tests to be perfect. You need them to invite you from reflex to reflection. The animal keeps you alive. The architect keeps you honest. When gut and data split the room in the world as advertised, facts and feelings shake hands and pose for the brochure photo. In the world as lived, they argue at dinner. You will have days when your spreadsheet claims one thing and your ribs whisper another. You cannot outsource your life to either. So here is a sequence for such days, as practical as a carpenter's belt. A. Classify the decision. Reversibility. If it's easily reversible, privilege the gut and run the experiment. Collect real data. If it's hard to reverse, privilege analysis and slow down. Impact. When stakes are small, favor speed. When stakes are life-shaping, broaden your consultation. Domain feedback. In domains with clear feedback loops, medicine with labs, trades with immediate results, crafts with visible outcomes, trained intuition deserves a bigger vote. In domains where luck and noise dominate, be suspicious of your confidence. B. Expand the frame. Write a one-paragraph brief that would make sense to someone not in your life. State the decision, the options, the constraints, the uncertainties, and the values involved. Reading yourself as if you were a stranger is an underrated superpower. The gut despises cramped rooms. Give it a balcony. Invite a red team. Ask one trusted person to argue the case against your preferred choice. If you are addicted to certainty, force yourself to list 3 ways you could be wrong. If you are addicted to doubt, force yourself to list 3 ways you could be right. Watch your body as the arguments land. Not the opinions, the body. It will flinch at truth before your self-image agrees. Use the 2-pocket rule. Carry 2 pockets. Left, the gut; right, the numbers. If both pockets agree, walk. If left says yes and right says no, design a small test to buy information cheaply. If right says yes and left says no, ask whether the no is bias, fear of newness, fear of loss of face, or signals safety, values misalignment. If neither pocket has anything persuasive in it, wait, not forever, but until a new piece of reality arrives. Movement is not the same as progress. Stillness is not the same as stuck. Mara did precisely this. She wrote her brief. She called her friend Theo, whose kindness had teeth. He asked, "When you imagine yourself in that office, what does your lunch look like?" She laughed. Then she answered. The answer surprised her. Not because of the food salads or salads everywhere, but because of the way her imaginary shoulders rounded, the way she tightened her voice to fit a cadence that wasn't hers. The numbers still made sense. The gut began to talk in specifics. A hinge, not a door. Repairing your instrument after a wrong note. No matter how careful you are, you will misread your gut. You will call novelty destiny. You will call terror wisdom. You will follow the siren and beat yourself on the sand. When that happens, the temptation is to condemn your intuition outright. I can't trust myself and live forever in spreadsheets. Resist. A season of wrong notes does not mean you are not a musician. It means you are overdue for a tune-up. Consider Dev, a project manager whose appetite for risk had been his gift and his undoing. He greenlit features that users didn't ask for and occasionally loved. He also chased trends down dead alleys. After a costly miss, he began to distrust any excitement. His body, once a compass, had become a scold. His repair began with 3 commitments. 1. Name the pattern, not the self. He stopped saying, "I am reckless," and started saying, "My excitement tends to overweigh first-week engagement metrics." The difference is not cosmetic, it is neurological. The former statement is a fixed identity that invites despair. The latter is a pattern that invites adjustment. 2. Build guardrails that don't kill flow. He installed 2 cheap gates, a 24-hour cool-off before irreversible commitments, and a short user test before any feature larger than 2 weeks of work. His gut could still initiate. The gates added friction, where friction was wisdom. Keep a proof notebook. Send. He wrote a sentence each time his intuition helped, and a sentence each time it didn't. The goal wasn't balance for balance's sake. It was reality. The book revealed that in well-understood areas of the product, his gut's hit rate was high. In status-driven decisions, what would impress the board, his gut was vanity in costume. Patterns don't lie when you're kind enough to let them speak. Repair is less dramatic than collapse, which is why it's easy to overlook. It looks like a humming instrument returning to pitch. It looks like the white of your knuckles loosening on the steering wheel. It looks like laughter during a post-mortem. It looks like a life that is interesting again in the right places. The ethics of, I just have a feeling. I have a feeling about this person. We have all said it. We should all be careful with it. The line between intuition and bias is not a line at all, but a fog that burns off only in honest sunlight. Practical ethics for using your gut around people. Check for familiarity bias. People who share your rhythms, education, accent, or hobbies will feel safer. That feeling is not a verdict on their character. When hiring, selling, mentoring, or policing, annotate your gut with this fact. If you still want to choose the familiar, justify it in criteria that would make sense to a stranger. Distinguish vibe from behavior. They give me a weird vibe is not data. They interrupted 3 times, deflected a direct question, and chuckled when I described a boundary is data. Translate vibes into behaviors before you act on them. Your gut will become more accurate the more you train it to produce specifics. Seek disconfirming evidence. If you feel aversion, look for one reason you might be wrong before you withdraw. If you feel attraction, look for one reason you might be glamorizing. This is not to anesthetize desire or caution. It is to let them breathe through real lungs. There is also the matter of power. The more power you wield, the more your hunches shape other people's hours, the more you owe it to them to calibrate your instrument. Let your gut be the scout, not the judge. Let it point and say, over there, and let the process go see. Attention as the soil of intuition. We like to talk as if intuition is a lightning strike. Often, it is a garden. What grows in the garden depends on the soil, the water, the weeds you pull, the sun you let in. Soil, in this metaphor, is attention, the quality and availability of it. Tired attention makes jittery guts. Divided attention makes vague hunches. Exhausted attention makes you outsource your life to whatever is loudest. If you want to listen well, audit your attention the way an athlete audits their nutrition. Carve quiet pockets that keep their shape. 15 minutes in the morning without screens is not an aesthetic flourish. It is a minimum viable environment for your animal to report in. Do it in scruffy ways. Kettle boiling, toast popping, feet on a cool floor. You don't need a ritual you will one day resent. You need space you will one day crave. Move the body so the messages can move. Walk, stretch, lift something, twist your spine. The gut speaks through breath and blood. It is hard to hear it if your shoulders are wearing your ears like hats. Create a low-stakes practice field. Choose a daily decision route to walk, order to make, call to place, and decide it first by feeling, then by reason. Compare results in your notebook. You are not gambling your future. You are teaching your animal and your architect to dance. Guard your inputs. If you flood your senses with outrage, envy, and doom, your gut will be noisy with other people's emergencies. Curate what you feed the animal. It is not head in sand to protect the choir from car alarms. Attuned attention makes subtlety visible. Subtlety is where your intuition lives most of its life. A field manual for everyday use. What follows is not a manifesto but a pocket-sized manual, the kind that fits inside a coat and survives a laundry cycle. The 5-minute counsel. When stuck, call the scientist, the poet, and the guard dog. 2 sentences each. Then let the architect summarize and the animal vote. If the vote is split, design a probe, one action that reveals the world more clearly. The 2-question litmus. Will this choice make me more or less available to what I care about next week? Would I explain this choice the same way to a stranger and to someone who loves me? The small bet habit. Turn a decision into a series of small bets that fail cheaply and teach loudly. Let each bet be a data point for the gut. The habit makes you braver, not by numbing fear, but by sizing it to the room. The candle rule. If listening to your gut extinguishes someone else's candle to make yours look brighter, you're not listening to your gut. You're feeding your ego. If it lights another candle, even if it also lights a fire under you, you're probably close to something true. The night test. Notice how you fall asleep after you commit. Not the first night, when adrenaline lies. The third night, when your nervous system knows whether it is carrying a secret. If sleep collapses around you like a well-made tent, keep walking. If sleep perches like a suspicious crow on the back of your chair, recheck the map. Keep the manual humble. Manuals don't save you. Practice does. The long walk to daylight. Mara scheduled a second conversation with the company that had made the offer. She asked about flexibility, about who got promoted and why, about how conflicts were handled when the conflict was not about work, but about how people treat each other when they are scared. The hiring manager answered earnestly, sometimes a half-inch too fast. Mara's notebook recorded behaviors, not vibes. At the end, the hiring manager asked if Mara had any hesitations. I'm trying to hear what your culture feels like on my 3rd Tuesday, Mara said. Not launch day, not all hands day, the Tuesday in late winter, the Tuesday that no one photographs. There was a pause. The manager took a breath so audible it joined the conversation. On that Tuesday, she said, we sometimes rush. We sometimes forget a person is a person. We are not good at seeing the airway of a hard week. I'm better at it when I'm reminded. I don't know if that answer helps you. It did. The specificity helped. The humility helped. The gut unclenched a notch and then didn't. The architect took notes. They kept walking. Mara didn't decline the offer. She reformulated it. She asked for 1-day remote, not as a perk, but as a structure to preserve the attention she would need to do good work. She asked for a 90-day check-in on workload and recovery. She asked for 1 meeting a month dedicated to how they were working, not just what they were producing. The company said yes to the first 2 and proposed a quarterly rhythm for the 3rd. The numbers were still the numbers. The gut was now part of the math. Across town, Kento's blue dried into the wall and told the story he wanted the building to tell. A bicyclist stopped, took a photo, nodded to nobody. Intuition, like art, is often witnessed in the corner of someone else's eye. The places we learn to trust ourselves. If you grew up where listening to your body was mocked, you will need to build a new village inside your hours. If you were praised only when you were efficient, you will need to turn down the volume on the part of you that equates slowness with failure. If you were rewarded for boldness, beware of seeking that reward inside decisions that ask for quiet. We inherit blueprints. We can redraw them. A story of redraw. Layla, a nurse in a busy emergency department, was famed for just knowing. She could read a room like a meteorologist reads clouds. After a near miss, she realized her knowing had a hole in it. Men who smiled through pain slipped past her alarms. Her father had smiled through everything. A pattern disguised as love was governing a professional skill. She named it. She told a colleague, They made a ritual. For every smiling patient, they ordered a second set of vitals before discharge. No exceptions, no self-flattery. Months later, a man strode in jaw easy, jokes in pocket, and left with an aortic dissection caught in time. Layla's intuition didn't shrink, it matured. Maturity is less glamorous than genius and just as rare. It looks like admitting when our instruments are bent toward a childhood weather pattern. It looks like inviting other people's instruments to cross-check ours, the ocean and the glass. Sometimes the strongest argument for intuition is not the life it saves or the art it enables. It is the kind of person it makes you, someone who is porous to the world and yet not owned by it. We can live like a glass of water surface, disturbed by every passing truck, or like the ocean surface suffering weather, depths steady. Interoception, attention, practice. These are not for the sake of heroics alone. They are to thicken the water. Take the walk where you don't put words on the trees. Take the conversation where you listen until your body stops trying to reload your rebuttal every 5 seconds. Eat when you are hungry, not when you are bored of your thoughts. Stretch the muscles you never call by name. Let your eyes rest on something that neither demands nor disappoints. All of this sounds like a lifestyle blog. It is not. It is a rewiring kit. It is how you become, again, a person who can tell the difference between the world and the stories you tell about it. And then, because life is not a retreat but a hallway of knocks, take that steady water back into your work. Answer the email after one breath you can feel. Enter the meeting with shoulders that have learned how not to lean forward to beg. When you pitch, notice the hands in the room that belong to people who sign checks, but also to children who once wanted to draw horses. Aim at the human. Your gut is better at aiming than your ego. The ordinary miracle. By evening, the city remembered it was tired. The cafe where Mara had begun her day stacked chairs in the window like scaffolds for moths. She walked home the long way, not because she had a feeling, but because the light on the bricks had the color that makes you believe in continuity. She did not know if this job would be the one she would keep. She did not know if her rearranged terms would hold. She did not need to know. She had shrugged off the superstition that decisions must be perfect to be true. She had placed her gut and her data on the same table and asked them to explain themselves. She had let daylight in. On her stoop, she found a package. Inside, a small round stone, smooth as conversation, blue as a sky that knows how to be cool. Kento, who lived 2 floors up, had slid it into her mail slot because he had seen her pause once, hand on doorknob, breathing like someone who had remembered how to breathe. There was no note. There was no need. She held the stone and felt, not a message, but a weight that made sense in her palm. The body knows this, the meaning of weight, the sanity of something that fits. We ask, is gut feeling real? As if we are seeking permission from a world of papers and panels. The more useful question turns out to be gentler and closer. Is your gut feeling yours, trained by your lived loops, translated into specifics, tested in daylight? Is it a scout that serves your values rather than a general that overrides them? Does it help you steward what you love, including the body that must carry it? The answer, if you have done the work, is yes. The animal under the noise is not infallible. Neither is the architect. Together, they are wiser than either alone. So practice. The notebook, the scans, the slow walks, the pre-mortems with kindness, the afterglow you let your nervous system register as real. Practice the red team and the two pockets. Practice letting a Tuesday noon be enough. Practice being the sort of person who can say, with a straight face and a relaxed jaw, "I listened," and mean both the numbers and the hum behind the ribs. One day you will decide something small, what time to leave, which door to take, who to sit beside, and it will later unfurl into a story that cannot be organized into causality but smells like grace. You will be told you were lucky. You will agree. And you will also know that luck favors instruments tuned to catch its breeze. Mara set the blue stone on the table that still wobbled. She did not fix the table. She liked that imperfect readiness, the way a thing can steady itself around its unsteadiness. She poured water. The stone became more itself in the glass, a brighter blue, not louder, just truer. She laughed alone and then not alone, because some laughters are answered by the room. She breathed without instructing herself to. She was not waiting for a sign. She was not demanding a guarantee. She was, in the plainest, oldest way, listening. Somewhere beyond her window, scaffolding clinked. Somewhere a smoke alarm mistook toast for trouble and still saved a life later that month. Somewhere a pilot felt a plane's tone shift a hair and nudged the sky back into agreement. Somewhere a nurse trusted the frown behind a smile and ordered one more test. Somewhere a mural dried. Somewhere an email was written with a sentence removed because it came from pride, not care. Somewhere a child stared at a puddle and lifted one foot and put it down again and learned an element without knowing the word for it. We are oceans, not glasses, instruments, not theories, gardens, not lightning rods. The gut is real because the body is not a rumor. It has been alive longer than your slogans. It has survived nights without knowing what the morning wanted. You owe it attention, and it owes you nothing except its truth. This is the end of the book and the beginning of a practice. If you want a benediction, let it be small. Keep a stone on your desk that fits your hand, not as magic, not as superstition, but as weight. When the day jangles your instruments, pick up the stone and remember the animal beneath the noise and the architect above the noise are the same life, looking for the same door. Open it. Breathe once. Walk through. Let the city decide itself around you. And when your body hums the drop, the warmth, the buzz you have learned to translate, to listen until what is real becomes obvious enough to live.